he was over helping the ambulance crew with the patient over Floyd. And I went over and told him, I said, we need to clear this whole corner out. We were going to back out and leave. That's what I had in mind. And
I evacuated the restaurant and the filling station. I told him to get on the other end of the gravel, which is in this area, which is where basically everyone went.
About the time we got done doing that, I told Floyd came up and asked me, he said, well, how far back should we go? And I said, well, a quarter mile would be a good place to start because of the propane tank back there. If it blows up, we're going to be in trouble. And I think somewhere along in here we got a little bit of water established, and we took an inch and a half around and got it on the propane tank. Now the propane tank probably, when you look back at it, wasn't in a whole lot of danger of levying because it didn't really get hot enough to burn the paint off of it. It didn't, it had a grass fire that went by and went underneath it, scorched it a little bit, and it got scorched from the building. But the concrete block wall in the back of the building kept it from getting any hotter than it did. And also, there was no direct flame impingement on the tank for a long period of time. However, we felt a lot better just having water on it. So that's about where we went that way for a little while, was trying to keep water on the propane tank, and we more or less left the other end of it just to take care of itself. And at that time I felt a lot better being on the south end of the structure with it in between where my crew was and the tanks, and we just left the north end of it go to itself.
At a point in time here, somewhere in this, between this, when we did our tactical retreat, we pulled engine 5 down back across the highway, dropped off its skid load, and laid all the way up to the fuel tanks at Trudy's, or the fuel, not the fuel tanks, but by the pumps at Trudy's. I felt that that was an easy access for the tankers to get into. If I'd have known I had another 250 feet of hose on my truck, I probably went 250 feet further. I didn't want to run out of hose, but I should have maybe went ahead and did it. We dropped the full tank off our truck 1 beside engine 5. Went down, took the driver, put him in engine 2, and sent it to go start shoveling water. Well, what we did was we hooked the skid back up and laid line out, so we'd have 2.5-inch lines laid down the hill. And then engine 2 went to water. It was empty at that time, and so was engine 5. At this point in time, Todd Self got up with me at the where we dropped off engine 1's folded tank and dumped it beside engine 5, and we hooked the line to it and started trying to charge the line, and it forgot to hook up a hard suction. So you can about imagine we were pissed in the wind there for a second, but we kind of figured out what we'd done wrong. We got our hard suction laid off, and then the truck died. It just died. We had no idea what did it, the mechanics looking into it. So at that point in time, I didn't have anything up there to pump water. Boonville pulled in on the scene, and I directed them to bring their pumper up. And that was my idea when I dispatched it, was to use their truck to pump water, use ours to haul water. Our trucks were better at hauling water, their trucks were better at pumping water. We got up there, Harris County got there about that time, and here again I made a positioning error. I positioned their truck in between the 2 folded tanks, and again, it's not being familiar with their equipment. I kind of thought that they could draft off to either side. And as it was, you can only draft off to the one side. And we dropped Howard County's folded tank on the other side, hooked them up, and got the truck started pumping water. We hooked up both 2.5s into there. We was able to supply approximately 1,500 gallons of water at that point to the fire. When the folded tank went empty, we didn't have any tankers back yet. We had 3 trucks sitting at the hydrant over at 135 and I-70, or over behind the big cowboy at our new station's hydrant we put in out there. And the hydrant probably will flow about 600 gallons a minute, and it's on 6-inch mains, but it wasn't even beginning to keep up with the amount of tankers wanting to fill. And they notified us of this problem, and we started dispersing tankers to the Boonville fire hydrants. We went to the high school and Sunrise Sunset subdivision. When Boonville pumped that first folded tank empty, I decided that we had gotten engine 5 started at that point and sent it after a load of water, which I want to thank Ron Taylor for having set of jumper cables in the back of the truck, because they got commandeered and we got it started. It left, and we were sitting there without any water, and I had a full folded tank on the other side of Boonville's truck, and I asked Carl, could we draft off the other side? He advised me we couldn't. So at that point in time, I decided, well, let's move Boonville over beside the other folded tank so they can draft, and then we'll move this empty folded tank beside it so we can dump tankers into both of them. And at this point in time, when we got the truck repositioned, we started experiencing another problem. Van, I'll let you bring that up.
Truck lost its crack. But we found out the truck.
What was again, mechanical difficulty.
Yeah. Well, we got it fixed.
And during this, I apologized to Van, but he said he didn't. I didn't make him mad. I climbed up on it and even tried to prime it myself. And I think we did finally get it by flushing it back through the flushing the booster tank back through the hard suction, and was able to get her pumping again. Once we got it established pumping, then I think you all sat there most of the afternoon and was able to pump fairly well without too much interference, weren't you? Or did you have a lot of times you didn't have water, or what was?
Just tankers was getting back quick.
Yeah.
Slow down.
Yeah.
Slow down the delivery to the scene to keep up with the tankers coming in.
I want to thank Van Wart this time, and Ron, both of you guys for making me feel good, because you've taken a hell of a lot of pressure off of me by taking your equipment up there. And Carl was doing an excellent job working the truck and making sure we had adequate pressure in. Here's the problem that we had about this much time. Boone County started driving on the scene. Somehow, from the time this started until at this point, Jim Gann and I have been missing each other. I left my portable in engine 5. Stupid mistake. I had just charged it up the night before, but I left it in the truck when it left. So I didn't have any communications with Danny. Just had a portable and was able to talk back and forth with Danny. Well, when Boone County arrived on the scene, Jim and I were missing each other. I would talk to Van and Steve Paulsell, and then Jim would talk to them. We were kind of giving conflicting orders. I think both of our ideas were basically the same, but they were just enough different that we were confusing the people coming in. And you might write down that we had a instant command system kind of broke down there for a few months. We tried to model our instant command system off of what Boone County's using. However, we don't do it that much, and we're kind of rusty at it. And at this particular fire was one we needed a very well-defined instant command system. Jim and I finally made face-to-face contact and decided that we were getting conflicting information. And so, basically, at that point in time, Jim said, if you want to run it up here, I'll go down there, or you can go down there and I'll run it up here. And at that point in time, since he had the portable, I said, Jim, why don't you take care of this, and I'll go down here. And then I went down to Danny, and we went ahead and took care of the grass fire. I'll turn it over to Jim now and let Jim say what maybe politics or whatever's going on there.
Well, it started, of course, when we were missing each other, which Larry already talked about. A couple things was, and I mentioned it earlier, is my inexperience in working with 4 agencies all at one time. But I think we got over that some. We had. I know we were giving Danny trouble, but honestly, we were trying as hard as we could. Other than that, when the only thing that I was probably the most let down about was Boone County super tanker. It backed up there, and I'm thinking in my mind, he's got about 5,000 gallons of water on there. That ought to hold room to cover for a little bit. Well, it couldn't. Not knowing how their units were set up, Boone County super tanker cannot dump. It has to either be nursed off of or pumped off. Well, they used a portable pump, and it couldn't keep up. So we had to supplement. I'd already written in my mind, well, they're taken care of a little bit. Now I had engine 2 down here in this area that I had to keep going. So I was trying to keep them going with the tankers that were coming in, thinking that Boonville's got 5,000 to work with. Well, they couldn't keep up. So that caused another delay because the next one that came in and I had to send up there. And so I don't think we used maybe even 500 to 1,000 gallons off of Boone County super tanker.
That's the same, isn't it? You got a 5,000 gallon tank.
A point here-
Water you can't use.
Point here that I'd like to bring up, and it's something Danny and I talked about. Boonville trucks are probably supplying, I guess, at 600 gallons a minute. I don't know, Carl, you might be able to tell me. Where we were trying to pump about that thing. It may have been, and again, this is after the fact, hindsight 2020, and knowing now what we know about Boone County super tanker, that being our truck was sitting down there pumping with a pump that was only pumped about 300 gallons a minute, 350, and maybe we should have pulled it down there, run a 2.5 off of it into our folding tank on engine 2, and utilized all the incoming tankers to go to Boonville's truck.
The problem with that, though, is that thing's a hog on ice, and you couldn't have positioned it anywhere except where it being the way everybody else.
Yeah.
We only had one driving lane next to engine 2, and once we got the tanker by it, to go back to the back set of tanks, then it stayed open. But I don't
Then
think
we laid 2.5 down to it.
yeah, we could. But
Just nursed off on the tube.
We probably couldn't hurt off those. That's something, again, that's something we need to think about in the future. We didn't realize it at that time. And I'll tell you what, everybody was thinking, I know Jim was, I was, probably Danny was, we seen this big truck pull in and we knew it had 5,000 gallons of water on it. That we finally got some water. And then in actuality, we had water, but we couldn't get it there fast.
But, so that was the biggest letdown for me, and that's something that I'm going to file away for the future. That's really about it. Once we started shutting down, we moved everything across the road, so we abandoned some water up there that we ended up going back and getting later. But about that time, we were starting to free everybody up.
Really, yeah.
Well, I don't think what we call Boone County is waiting more on that. We call it better instead of don't request a super tanker.
We didn't request it this time.
Well, it would have been all right if we'd known how to use it.
The next
Put it
time
on the side of the engine and put a hard suction on it, and you probably wouldn't have a lot of trouble.
Like in Boonville,
That same
put hard
truck,
suction on it.
that same truck, y'all had out there, we was over the cranker, really far over there, you had out. They run the motor, we hooked up to the truck to keep, with the pump water. And you use, that's all the time we had, water. That truck has never took any other way, this was the big.
It'd be nice if it could dump. It can't. If their bond issue passes, this is for general information for in the future. If their bond issue passes, they're buying a whole new unit super tanker that will be equipped with dump valves and ways to unload that.
Somebody out there surely got some comments, yeah, who were.
I'm not real sure with that technical one, but the people up close with a breathing apparatus and a little more safety.
I don't think they ever had a problem with smoke where I was at. We were always.
I mean, just like you said, you probably didn't think it like a tank can blow, but if it had.
If the tank had blown, breathing apparatus probably wouldn't make much difference.
Probably would initially stop inhalation.
Yeah, I might have.
I don't know.
The problem we was looking at was breathing apparatus, and I initially had said that knowing that the station had different types of hazardous material in it, like any gas station does in a convenience store, that we would fight it with breathing apparatuses on. But when we got there was no such thing as ever an interior attack or anything, and our guys were able to stay out of the smoke basically without getting involved in it. I think our breathing apparatuses would have wore personnel out a lot faster.
Let's say, even if you had put them on and had one through the first air change, once they ran out of air, you took the mask off and throw it down and then carrying a tank, and I doubt you ever kept anybody in them.
Yeah.
If you had known it was gonna blow up and been wearing them, it might have done you real good, but it should have been a remote deal.
What really helped us on that, sitting there on the end of them nozzles, was that wind blowing the way it was.
Yeah.
That's what kept the smoke out from hitting us in the face.
Thought so.
I know one trouble that we had up at the hydrant, when I was up there, I just went up and filled once before I ended up getting somebody else to drive and do with engine 2, is our apparatus, we have 3 apparatus up there and 2 drivers.
Yeah. I discussed that with the individuals involved. We had, our truck number 1 wasn't utilized near to its capacity, to the point that we had a grass fire that we requested in truck 6. The guy who drove truck 6 had jumped in truck 1 and started shoveling water, and the guy that was driving truck 1 had got out and helped with the fire. So we ended up needing truck 6. When he got back to the hydrant, he left truck 1 and brought truck 6 down to help protect those exposures from the grass fire. And we didn't have a driver for truck 1 for probably about 2 hours.
Well, it was part of, you know, I'll take the blame on that because that's one I was in. But mainly fire guys, anybody that does that, the problem was, no one knew truck 1 was up there. I was told later on that the clutch went out.
Yeah.
Danny had no idea where truck 1 was.
I didn't.
Somebody's going to jump out of one truck to another. They need to let somebody know why it was
But
left.
the clutch wasn't out.
Yeah, right.
I was the one that put the driver in 1 on 6 because Danny was yelling for
Right,
truck
right.
6.
And we realized that. That was a good move, but the thing was, we should have got a driver back.
Well, I was told at the time that the driver was coming up,
Yeah.
but then I ended up coming back with 2.
But I had no idea that engine 1 was down.
Yeah. Russell, you had a comment about, from the ambulance point of view, on fire personnel. You might want to bring that up.
I was just, it wasn't that bad this time, I was just wondering, on an incident command like this, like how much, I don't know if you call it, or medical personnel would have, or fire personnel, as far as, coming out. Danny requested one time for us to check out some of the firemen coming out, and they didn't look that bad, but we just wondered, me and Julie Martin were there, we had air conditioning and everything going, and the wind felt great, but we was just wondering, a couple people come out kind of red, and we just wondered about checking some vital signs and stuff like that, and what kind of authority medical.
Did you ever ask anybody to let you check them out and then refuse?
No, because they didn't, like I said, they didn't look that bad. They were just a little red, and the wind felt great. But on future stuff, I was just wondering what kind of.
If you see somebody, as far as the ambulance goes, if you see somebody that you feel needs to sit down, that's one of, I speak for our department only, that you feel needs to sit down, or get away from it for a minute, get the individual. If you have a problem with it, then try to get with command, and we'll make a command decision at that point to whether that person needs to come out or not. Brings up another problem that I saw. It's something we didn't utilize. We had a lot. Now we utilized the hell out of Boonville firefighters. Thank God you guys were there. Well, we utilized the hell out of our personnel. I feel we had a lot of guys come in from Boone County and Harris County into the incident a little bit. Maybe we should have, if you all were willing to do that, pulled some of our guys back away from that and made them go up and sit down, and let your guys just have a driver in the truck and utilize your firefighters down on the scene to run the nozzles and help us out down there and give our guys a break. We had some really exhausted guys when we got done out there.
I got a question. On the grass fire, we had Boone County, or Boonville, all 3 of them fighting it. Who takes charge on something like that to get everybody working together when you have seniority in different departments?
It should have been designated. Again, that's break down the incident command. If you see a senior officer off of another department and he seems to know what he's doing, let him take it and run with it. Even you could have took it and run with it. Anybody that's in a situation like that, my point of view, anybody correct me here if you think I'm wrong, could go ahead and take charge of a situation like that and take care of it. And if you don't feel like you're qualified to take charge, get with the command post and let him make a decision on that. That's something that maybe we need to work at a little more. Like Wayne Lambert said in the video, we actually had 2 fires going at once and we had to contend with it. Danny?
I want to hear something from you other people. Somebody else take my turn. There's got to be some more comments later.
Van, you
You guys can look, we haven't heard anything out of you.
Bryce Boy and Van, Ron, you guys.
Only comment I've got to say is I think you guys done a hell of a job, and we're all gonna see things that we should have done. You always see that in a park. I think you've done one hell of a job out there. I think you should be commended. I feel should commend you guys for what you did out there. You all come by the next day and ask me what we'd have done. We'd have done it different for the simple reason we got more water. So that shouldn't be any question about it. We would have been possible out there. If I had seen it, we could possibly got enough water. I would have mentioned that day done, and you all seen it. But it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have shot water across the road. But you got to have a lot of water for that day done. But I think you all done a good job. That's all I can say for you is good things. And I'm supposed to be a leader. If somebody clapped their hands right hard, I've been the first to leave them out of there. I think you guys just done one hell of a job. I really do. I think you've done a hell of a job.
Well, I think we knew what we wanted to do. I mean, we wanted to dump a river full of water on the tank.
Right.
And, other than that, I wasn't worried about too much. Just put water on the tank, put water on the tank, put water on the tank, and take care of the propane tank. And that was our 2 main objectives, the propane tank and the gasoline tank. The only problem was not adequate personnel or the willingness to work together or anything like that. We had personnel, we just didn't have the equipment, we didn't have the water. We had a kick-ass engine and a hydrant sitting there with a water tower back on the backside of the lot, and we'd done a lot different.
I was looking for a lake around and I found a water lagoon behind over there.
Tell you what, about
Yeah, I
that,
put my pump can out there on the fire.
we could have diked down below at the edge of the property and drafted out of that and run back through with some fuel, and it might not have helped too much.
The grass fire never concerned Danny, and I understand why.
It did when it got up to the house right north of us, and I tried to get 6 up there to protect it, and 6 never showed up because it had been abandoned. 6 never showed up until after the fire had gone by the house, and after that it never bothered me a bit because.
Well, Danny had his reposition over by Kunz's house over off the outside road there. And the field was too soft for us to utilize it. I mean, one person in that truck that put that fire out, but it was too soft for them to get out there in that field. They just buried it right off the bat. When you see me down there with my helmet all scratching my head, and I didn't have my bunker coat on, I think you helped me with the line back around there, and we drug line and decided that was for the birds. We had 300 feet of 1.5 inch put together and got stretched it as far as Mr. Grice and myself could pull it. And we decided that was for the birds, and I went back and got Stuart Clark and with a brake, and I put a pump can on the back, and we walked across that field, and that was the hardest work I did all afternoon. Walked across that field, it was soft, we were getting mud on our boots, and the fire luckily was burning into the wind. It wasn't burning, the wind wasn't taking it. It had already burned itself out with the way the wind would have blown. So if the wind would have ever shifted on us, we'd have been on Shit Creek. But we was able to basically put it out with one pump can and about a half of another one, which I filled up out of the lagoon. I got to the lagoon, we were standing out in the middle of this field, and I looked back this way, it's about a quarter mile to one of the engines. I looked back this way, it's a quarter mile to truck 6, and I just walked right out in the middle of that lagoon. And I wouldn't bother me, so at that point, sit down in the middle of that lagoon and just sit there a while. I filled it up with water, and then Mark took it over, and we finished it off. We used a lot of the natural breaks, such as the lagoon, and there was a little bit of a stream where the septic tank was running down to the lagoon to stop the grass fire, and just basically stopped it around the lagoon and let it burn to the lagoon. The reason, my only concern with the grass fire would have been if at any point in time the wind would have shifted around on us, and then we'd have had a hell of a grass fire. And the big concern was I didn't know what was on the other side of that field. That field's an awful big field, and I didn't know what was over, and I figured, well, I had a couple guys get it out, let's go get it out and get it out of my hair. And get it out of Danny's hair, because he had all he needed to handle up there in the front of the gun. I think at this point in time, we were about to the point starting to release the Boone County and Booneville and some of the others. Danny's going to go on.
There wasn't much to do, but in my opinion, wait till the gasoline burned out of the tanks. I didn't want to put the fire out, because then we had a contamination problem from the gasoline running off the site. And we had requested DNR early on, and I think there was some confusion as to what was actually running off the scene. And I don't know whether, it kind of appeared to me that DNR got an idea that we didn't have all the big problems, so they weren't real sure whether they wanted to send anybody.
Well, the story with DNR was, I called Booneville and asked them to get DNR on the horn and to come to the scene. She called me back and told me that I had the station owner call DNR and that they were not coming. So I told Randy about it. I guess he called them, and then at one point later on, we called and made a specific request for them to come down there, or to come to the scene. So that's kind of what transpired with them. It was also communicated to them that we did have a gasoline spill, or gasoline runoff in the field.
Which we felt we did have.
They really didn't appear at the start of it to me to be concerned at all, in the least bit, about what we had going on. It was the idea I got, and I kind of got the idea as time went on that we were going to be left holding the bag here, and we were going to be left making decisions as to what was the dike or not the dike, and if it was the wrong decision, then it was going to come back on us later. And once I finally figured out that this was what was going on, I told somebody to call Booneville and specifically request them to come to the scene, and tell them that I wanted them on the scene, because I wanted to get them up there. As Bob Stein from Union Pacific said up there on the Lean River when it's spilled, you get DNR in early and clean it up to suit them and make them happy right off the get-go, and then you got things pretty well under control. But if you go ahead and try and clean it up to suit yourself, then DNR comes along later and says, well, why didn't you call us? And we got to do this, and so on and so on, and you all screwed up, and then you're going to wind up looking bad. So that's why I wanted them on the scene. And so I put in a special request for them to come to the scene, and I figured that way if it came along later and something happened, then they weren't going to be able to come back on us because they'd been requested, and I didn't want it to be my responsibility.
I wouldn't say too much, but I will for a little bit here. I think all departments need to be concerned environmentally, involving oils or gasolines or chemicals of any nature when you have spills or what have you. I think the fire department did a good job in letting it be burned up instead of going down the stream. And I had to compliment Danny on this. He was trying to let it burn itself up. When I was called in out there, I think we kind of forget about what's happening downstream and more concerned about the fire itself. But I got more involved thinking, now what's going to happen if we don't do something here environmentally? So I started tracing it out how far downstream it was going.
We'd already done that too.
You already done it? I had called out and maybe had some tracking on the thing, see how far it's going, how fast it's flowing, and whereabouts it's at. And when you push 50,000 gallons of water along with it, then it's got to be moving a little bit somewhere. And you can kind of tell.
Well, one thing you also got to be concerned about, if it turns out to be fuel oils or